the people who were most upset with this were the Darwinian biologists, the naturalists who didn't want to leave any room for design in biology or the natural sciences generally. Biggest supporters of the design inference when it was published was obviously my circle of friends, peers in the intelligent design movement. So Steve Meyer, Paul Nelson, Jonathan Wells, Mike Behe, Phil Johnson, and that whole circle. They were cheering this on. They were aware of this work as it was being written up. I was presenting these ideas. Design Inference was published, the first edition in 1998, but I had been presenting these ideas throughout the 90s leading up to that. And then, obviously, intelligent design movement had a fair number of followers by that point. So I think people who were skeptical of Darwinism were looking for a reliable scientific methodology for detecting design and using that to overturn Darwinism. I think these were this was the natural constituency, the people that were behind the book. I think there were people also who just genuinely thought the ideas were interesting. I mean, you look at some of the early reviews or endorsements of it. I mean, there were some mainstream philosophers of science, scientists who thought this was a worthy enterprise. But again, I think once it became clear that this method, methods are in a sense neutral, right? I mean, you can apply them anywhere. And as long as you're applying it to the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, data falsification in science, forensic science, gambling fraud, you name it, these ideas, this method works. But it was when that method was applied to biology, especially, that people got upset. And so I think, the people who were most upset with this were the Darwinian biologists, the naturalists who didn't want to leave any room for design in biology or the natural sciences generally. And it's interesting historically. I mean, there's a reason. There's this sort of allergic reaction to design in science. And I would say it probably goes back even to Francis Bacon, where he separated Aristotelian causes. He said, material causes, efficient causes, those are fine for science. So what's it made out of? How does it operate? But formal causes, how is it structured? And then final causes, what's its purpose? Those belong to metaphysics. And by drawing that distinction, I think Francis Bacon moved design reasoning outside of science. He himself was not a scientist, but he served as a philosopher of science. And I think that sort of thinking took hold, that design is not really a scientific notion. I remember just talking to somebody just recently, and it was about, well, how is design testable? How is it testable? And then I asked, well, if you have a radio signal from outer space that has a certain pattern that you can't explain other than by an intelligence, is that testable? Is SETI a testable scientific program? They said, yeah, okay, it is. So it's, I think the people who were most opposed, they just didn't want to allow design a foot in the door in the natural sciences. And so I think they ended up going into contortions to try to deny the method itself, and you have things as extreme now. I mean, and this was actually shortly after the book appeared, of multi-universes, sort of inflating probabilistic resources so that you could explain as a consequence of chance things that normally you would just say there's no way that could happen. It would be way too improbable. But so they would basically use a form of probabilistic reasoning, allow it into the natural sciences when they would never allow it into forensic science or areas like that. So, people were really upset with this. Some they just did not want these ideas to prosper and to have a place in the sciences. And that was my big claim, right? That these ideas, the design inference deserves a place in science that is as perfectly rigorous and respectable as a statistical methodology, and that we need to pay attention to it. And if it tells us design is there, then so be it. And so this is an ongoing controversy. I think we push that debate much further in this second edition of the design inference.